Bugün işğal altında qalan 8 kəndin məsələsi daim gündəlikdədir.
The issue of the 8 villages under occupation is always on the agenda. This issue was discussed during my contacts with the Prime Minister of Armenia, including the last conversation on foot in St. Petersburg. I raised this issue, and this issue is also on the agenda of commissions dealing with delimitation. I should also inform you that the next meeting of the commissions is scheduled for this month, and this issue is on the agenda. The delimitation issue of that region, the Karabakh Tovuz region, why maps of 1975, or 1970, or even the 1970s and 1990s, as expressed in some proposals? The answer is very simple, and I want to talk about it today. It is no secret that in the 20th century the lands of Azerbaijan were given to Armenia in parts, one day after the establishment of the Azerbaijan People's Republic in 1918. Unfortunately, the city of Yerevan was handed over to Armenia. However, there was no reason for that. This is an ancient city of Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani people lived there for centuries. And the history of Yerevan, the historical appearance that is being erased today, confirms the existence of Azerbaijani architectural monuments, their centuries-old existence. Yerevan is one of the cities that seem not to have an old city, but it was actually an Azerbaijani city, which was demolished and destroyed. As for that decision, I think, and everyone will probably agree with me, that it was a grave historical crime, not a mistake, but a crime. First, the Azerbaijanis living in Yerevan at the time were not even asked. Second, what was the rush? Were they in a hurry? The Republic was declared on May 28th, and Yerevan was handed over to Armenia on May 29th. And the explanation of that defies any logic. In exchange for that, Armenia would give up its territorial claims against Azerbaijan. Did it? No. It got even worse. The protests by representatives of Yerevan on the government of the Azerbaijan People's Republic at the time were not taken into account. So, it was a huge historical crime. And it was only a beginning. After the Sovietization in April 1920, in November, the Soviet government took the bigger part of West Zangezur from Azerbaijan and handed it over to Armenia. This is also a historical fact. There are maps. There are maps of the early 20th century. There is a map of the Azerbaijan People's Republic, and there is Zangezur on it, not eastern or western. All of Zangezur was the territory of Azerbaijan. And this happened during the Soviet era. Such gifts of land continued over the years. The last such gift of land was made in May 1969. By then, our lands were given to Armenia in parts. And from an area of about 100,000 square kilometers, I am talking about the territory of the Azerbaijan People's Republic, it dropped to 86,600 square kilometers. After Ilham Aliyev became the leader of Azerbaijan in July 1969, these land gifts and this process was stopped. Until then, it was given away in parts. This is why they wanted to use the maps of the 1970s as a basis. I asked them, why maps of the 1970s? Tell me. Explain to me what the methodological and political basis for that is. There is none. If we refer to the political foundations, then we should take either the period of the establishment of the Azerbaijan People's Republic or the period of Sovietization as a point of reference. It is a political methodology. If we prefer the chronological methodology, then let's see what maps were like at the beginning of the 20th century and build our work on these maps. That is, you are leaving out the 1960s, 1950s, and 1940s, and want to refer to the 1970s, precisely because our historical lands had already been given to them. This is why we strongly objected to that, and continue to do so. Unfortunately, it is not only Armenia that wants to use the map of the 1970s as a basis, but it's Armenia Plus Group. And we can never agree to this. Our position is quite fair and logical. We should refer to a political methodology as a basis. A chronology method should be taken as a basis. Or we should not base our work on any map at all. A commission was established. Expert groups should be set up to speed up the work of the commission. Let them go around those places and define that border, because today our border is conditional in nature. As for the occupied villages, I think that our proposal is also very logical. As you know, there are enclave and non-enclave villages. The villages that are not enclave, the 4 villages, should be returned to Azerbaijan without any preconditions. The villages that are enclave and enclave Armenian village is in the territory of Azerbaijan. A separate expert group should be established, and this issue should be discussed. We believe that all enclaves should be returned. The roads leading to these enclaves should have the necessary conditions, and the people living there should be accommodated in these enclaves. So, this is our position. We cannot understand Armenia's position. I just want to report to you what they are saying. They are saying that the sides should retreat in a mirror-like fashion. But to retreat where? Some of my colleagues asked me this question in May 2021. You remember that some clarification was being done on the border at the time, and they asked us during a telephone call to fall back. I asked, where do we fall back? They said, where will you come from? I said we had come from Baku. So shall we return to Baku? We haven't been there in 30 years. If that was indeed a border, then Armenia should have recognized it as such and placed border markers. After all, they did not see it as a border. They believed that their border was in Agdam, because we went there from Baku. We hadn't been there. So, where are we supposed to go back? Tell me where to go back, and we will. There was no answer to my question. So, of course, we are not going back anywhere, neither from the positions of May 2021, nor from the positions of September 2022. We are not taking a step back, because that border must be defined. However, our location, which is currently disputed by Armenia, does not include any settlement. The positions and heights where we stand have never been inhabited before. Today, Armenia continues to occupy our villages, and this is unacceptable. I want to note again that this issue will be clarified during the meeting of the commissions at the end of this month.
Komissiyaların deməli bu ayın sonunda görüşü əsnasında hesab edirəm ki, bu məsələyə aydınlıq gətirilecek.
Mr. President, will this be the subject of a peace treaty? Because it was announced by a number of officials that the issue of delimitation and demarcation will not be the subject of the peace agreement.
Bəli, bəli.
Yes, in principle, the peace treaty may contain a clause related to delimitation and demarcation. However, if we wait for the delimitation and delay the peace agreements, then the peace agreement may not be signed even after 30 years, because we have repeatedly said that delimitation with our friend and neighbor Georgia has not yet been completed. Only 70% of the border has been identified and confirmed. Our delimitation process with Russia lasted for 20 years. It was signed only in 2012. And although 13 years have passed, all those poles and signs have not yet been placed, and the process of demarcation has not been completed yet. Therefore, if we mix up these two topics, then the peace agreement will be delayed perhaps by 30 or 50 years. We believe that a peace treaty should be signed, and the sooner the better. We are not saying that this must be done on our conditions, but I think that our terms are the fairest. The delimitation process must continue. The villages must be returned to us. An agreement can be reached as a result of the work of the Commission on Enclaves. So, I think this is a completely logical approach.
Yəni işi nəticəsində də razılığa gəlmək olar. Yəni hesab edirəm ki, bu tam məntiqli yanaşmadır.